Good morning, everyone. In the last session, we discussed about the one of the important example called annotation example we defined here. So we created the annotation like this, and we have a different types of the policies. Like we come up with where exactly I want to use. I use the target information here, and we discuss about the one of the important called retention here. So the retention basically it will available like which location, source or class or runtime. These are all the important example we discussed in the last session. Now today we'll discuss about the another important example called so marker annotation. So marker annotation basically how this particular annotation is going to work internally. So if we observe carefully to define the marker annotation, basically we are not going to write any information
ठीक है लेकिन ये पैसा
inside this particular marker annotation. It's not going to contain any parameters here. Okay, so parameter is nothing but how we define the line number 11 and to line number 12, this particular method information. So those information is no longer available inside this particular marker annotation. It's something like okay, so this is will use as a my marker. Now you can see this particular annotation cannot contain any methods information. Okay, this is the one of the important annotation we are discussing. So it is one of the special kind of annotation. It does not contain any members. Member is nothing but methods. Whatever the method we discussed in the earlier example, if you see this my annotation, here we are defining string str and int value. But here if you observe this my marker annotation cannot contain any information. So it is an empty annotation. So this particular annotation we are going to call it as a marker annotation. Okay. Now this is important example we are discussing. Now what I will do, I'm going to make this annotation on top of this particular annotation. Now you can observe carefully. If I'm going to run this, how many annotation it will return here? It will try to return the 2 annotations. Now if you observe carefully, so I'm trying to run the same example here, whatever we discussed in the yesterday. Now you can read this like we have a 2 objects here. It will contain 2 objects here. Now you can see proxy 1 and proxy 2. Why I'm getting these 2? How many annotation we are having right now? 2 annotation we are having. So on top of this particular method, if I'm trying to add multiple annotations, how we can write here? So this get annotation method, it will try to return the multiple annotations. So because of that only we made annotation array. Okay, we made annotation array. Okay, so this is the important information we need to understand. So once we define this, now what we are doing is we are trying to repeating one by one. For the second annotation, we don't have any information here. So this is, it will not satisfy because this annotation is different. So instance of we made as a my annotation, but this is not the my annotation. The second annotation we are getting as a marker annotation. Okay, marker annotation. Now using this particular marker annotation, what we are doing is we are not printing any information. Only one value it is going to print because of this particular condition. And another important information inside this marker annotation, we don't have any values to print, but only one information we can check here. One information we can check, something like here marker annotation. Inside this particular condition, now if I'm going to make as a the marker annotation, how we can make here? So observe carefully, here I'm making the one condition if. Okay, and here now how I'm making m dot is annotation is present. Getting point. How this particular is annotation is present, this method is going to useful to identify this particular condition. Is annotation present? So what is the annotation is presented here? So this particular section code we can write inside this particular if condition, and here I'm going to write as a our marker here. Okay, at the rate we need to remove, and here dot class file. This is the annotation we can write. If the annotation is available, simply we can print a message. So what is the message we can print? My marker annotation is present. Okay, so this is a message I want to print. Now you can see both messages is printing here. So if I observe why it is printing 2 times, because this method it's trying to repeat, like this particular loop it's trying to repeat 2 times here. Okay, because of this particular 2 times, this condition is satisfying 2 times here, and it is printing the message here. If you are not interested right inside this particular loop, now what we can do here, we can make the condition, and if I'm going to print only 1 time it is printing. Okay, my marker annotation it is printing. Okay, this is one of the important information we need to write here. So along with this, we can write a single value annotation. So how we can write the single value annotation here? So that is another important example we need to understand. And again, annotation I'm trying to write here. So my single. Okay, this is nothing but my single annotation we are going to write here. Inside this particular my single, I'm going to write as a int value. Int value. So now you can write this particular method wherever we are trying to use this particular my single annotation. Here only I'm going to write the same annotation, my single, and we can make as a value something like 250. Okay, here I'm making the value, and if we want to print this annotation, what we can do, we need to make condition like this. We need to make condition like this. Instead of this particular my annotation, my single I'm making, and here and here we don't have this particular 2 methods, and simply an dot value. An dot value, we can make the condition and we can print the value. So whatever the 250 we given here, the particular 250 it is printing here. So you can see it is a single value annotation. Only one value it is going to take care of. Okay, so these are all the 3 annotation we defined here. First one is a marker annotation. Second one is the custom annotation we created, my annotation, and the third one is a single annotation. It is going to take only one value. Okay, so any questions here? Okay, if you don't have anything, now we'll try to identify the default, like predefined annotation, not the default. Whatever the annotation we define, these are coming from our Java language. What are all the annotation we are having inside this particular Java language? First one is target annotation. So where we define this particular target here, this is the java.lang annotation. Now you can see what we need to understand here. What we need to understand here. Now you can see the target annotation. So here we use the same target annotation inside this. Now you can see this is the target annotation we are using, and internally it is using the element type dot method. So same way, now what is expecting here? Element type, and it is a array type here. So why it is providing array type here? Basically it is contain multiple values. Okay, the same target internally, observe carefully, it is trying to use the annotation type here. It is trying to use annotation type. So this particular annotation, whatever the target annotation we are using, the target annotation it is trying to use on top of the another annotation here. Okay, so this is important information we need to understand here. How this particular annotation is working now, you can see we are having element type dot annotation type, and internally it is expecting type of values here. It is expecting type of values here. Okay, so now if I'm opening this, now we already discussed this particular type, field, method, parameter, constructor, and local variable, annotation type, and packages here. So these are all the important information we need to understand here. Okay, these are all the element type we are having. This is the enum here. We discussed about this particular enum in the previous example. So another important annotation, basically override. Override. This is the one of the important annotation because we discussed multiple times. Now you can see override is one of the marker annotation. Override is one of the marker annotation. So how we are doing it? It does not contain any methods information. So it is an empty annotation. And where we can use this particular annotation, we can use only on top of the method here. On top of the method, we are going to use this particular annotations here. Okay, and it is available only source here. Now you can see it is available only source. We cannot use this annotation at runtime, or this annotation it cannot available at dot class files also. Only in the source file only this particular annotation is available, something like override. Now you can read this, indicates that a method declaration is intended to override. So just we are identifying it, the method is going to override. Whenever the method is going to override, we are going to add this particular annotation. So just we are going to share the information whether the method is overridden or not. Okay, so by using this particular annotation, we are going to write the override information here. Okay, so this is one of the important example we need to understand this particular override annotation. So this is the way we can identify the predefined annotations. We are having lot of predefined annotations here. We are having the lot of predefined annotations, how it is going to work. And one of the another annotation, something like functional annotation. This is also the functional interface. Now you can see. So now you can see it is available at runtime. Okay. So whatever the override we have seen, that is available only source. But this functional interface annotation is available at runtime, and it is available on the type. Type is nothing but class or interface or enum. In the three locations we are going to. So if you observe carefully, based on the annotations we are having, the type is modifying it. Based on this particular type here, the annotation is modifying internally. Now you can see this is the retention we are having runtime, and the target we are making as a type. So type is nothing but it is available only on top of the classes, interfaces, and enum constants here. Okay, this is important we need to understand. And now you can read this, what is the use of this particular annotation here. So an informative annotation, it is a annotation here. So it is indicate that an interface type declaration is intended to be functional interface. So basically on top of this particular interface, we are going to write this. So just share the information. The interface is a functional interface. Okay, and now you can read a functional interface has exactly one abstract method. Get in the point. So only one abstract method we are going to have, and we can write a default method. So we can write the default method. So have an implementation, they are not abstract here. Get in the point. We can write any number of default method, but only one abstract method. Only one abstract method. This is very important information we need to understand here. Get in the point. So this is basically how we can identify this particular functional interface annotation is going to use on top of the interfaces we are going to make to share the information the interface can contain only one and only one abstract method and lot of default method. Getting the point? This is the way of writing the custom annotation. This is the one of the annotation we are using. We'll go for this only class or interface or enum constraints. Okay. So any questions regarding this particular predefined annotations here? Okay. So if you don't have anything, now I'm moving one of the important concept to call here. We'll try to discuss about the generic concept here. So how we can discuss about the generic concept? So it is important concept we need to understand here. Okay. So we'll see because this is one of the important example. So now observe carefully. Generic is nothing but we are going to write the parameter type. So the parameter type we can pass any number of any data type here. Getting the point? If I'm not adding the generic type here, what are the drawbacks we are going to identify? We'll identify first, and later what we need to understand here, the generic type, how it is going to use internally. So generic type is nothing but once we define the parameter, any data type we can pass. For example, here we define the annotation called my single. Okay, my single we define the data type called int value. So whenever I'm defining this particular int value, can I pass like a string value here? No, we cannot pass string value. Why we cannot pass this particular string value? Because it is going to throw an error. The type we define as a int here, but we are trying to provide as a string value. For example, if I go to this annotation example, and instead of this particular value 250, the same value to I'm giving 250, but inside this particular string. Now you can see what happening internally. We are getting an error. Why we are getting an error? It's because of the type is changed here. Whatever the type we used here, the definition type is different. The value type is different here. The value type we are providing as a string, but whatever we define as a int here. Okay, so this will not work here. This is one of the important example we need to understand here. Okay, one of the important example we need to understand here. Now what we need to understand basically, whatever the data type we are going to use, we need to use the same data type value. But here, what happening internally? We are not using the same data type here. We are trying to use the another data type. So because of that, we are getting an error. But here, the important concept what we need to understand using this particular generic here. Now what happens internally? What happening internally? Because here, because of this particular generic, we can write any data type here. So there is no specific information. Okay, so this is important here. And here, how we can write. The simple example I'm trying to write regarding this particular generic type. Now you can see. So the name of the class I'm defining as a generic here. And inside this particular generic, I'm making one type. So now you can see T I'm making. So this particular T is very important here. So this particular T, it is going to play very important role here. Something like we are going to pass any number of data type here. Okay, any data type, not only the particular, so string, integer, any data type we can pass. Okay, this is we need to understand very carefully. So now observe carefully what I'm doing here. Here I'm making T. So this is the object type I'm making. And here, this is the constructor. Okay, the constructor internally it is expecting the one parameter. The one parameter also I'm making as a T. Okay, this is important we need to understand here. So why I'm making this T? Basically, internally, whatever the class type we are providing, the same type we are going to provide constructor parameter. Constructor parameter. And now you can see get to obj. This is the method. The method basically I'm trying to returning as a T only. Here also I'm trying to return T. So now you can see this particular T is playing very important role here. Line number 4, so generic T and T objects. Okay, so now what you understand here, this is the one of the variable we declare. One of the variable how we declare earlier something like int obj or string obj, like how we defined the earlier example. Same way I'm defining T obj. So T is playing important role, something like a type here. Okay, what is the type? But when we are going to write this particular type, at the runtime, we'll define this particular type. At runtime, we'll define this particular type here. Okay, this is important. We need to understand here. Getting the point. So this is, we are defining the one generic type T object here. It is a constructor and it is a type here. It is a get object. It is the get object method. It is trying to return the same type here. Okay, and now what I will do here, I'm going to call the show method. So this particular, what is the type we are having, it will try to show the method here. Now you can see we are having show type method, and internally I'm trying to print the message something like obj dot get class dot get name. This particular get name will print to the type of this particular T is. Type of T is. Okay, this is important. We need to understand. Whatever the type we are defining it, the type of this particular T is, we can add this particular message. Whenever I'm going to call this particular show type, what happens internally? It will try to return this obj.getClass.getName. obj.getClass.getName. Getting the point. This is one of the important example we are discussing. And here only I'm going to write the object. So I'm trying to defining the main method, and internally observe carefully. So generic class I'm defining. So generic class is having the type. What is the type we can provide? Here we cannot provide the T. While creating an object, we cannot provide the T. So the T, it is going to replace it with which data type we are using. Something like integer. Okay, I'm using integer. Now, whenever I'm using this particular integer, now what I'm doing is, I'm going to call the constructor. So the constructor, basically, here we can write this particular generic here. Now, here, what is the value we can provide? What is the value we can provide? Here we need to provide the integer values. Okay, whatever the integer we are having, we need to provide the integer values. We cannot provide other data type. So why we cannot provide the other data type? Because the type we made as a integer. Whenever this particular type we made as a integer, this particular T, now it is going to replace with the integer. This particular T, now it is going to replace with the integer. And this particular T also, now it is going to replace with the integer. If you replaced with this constructor as an integer, how we are going to provide the string value? Okay, for example, if I'm trying to providing this, now we are getting an error. Now we are getting an error here. So this is one of the important example we are discussing here. Getting the point. This is one of the important example we are discussing, something like integer. Now what you need to understand here, we cannot provide the integer values because data type is different. Whatever the data type we are using, it is different. Now you can see, if I'm going to give 200, now we are not getting any error. We are not getting any error. So same example, if you observe carefully, here I'm calling instead of this particular string. Instead of this particular string, I'm trying to modify with instead of this particular integer, now I'm trying to modify with this particular string. Okay. Now you can change here the same 200 I'm giving, but I'm giving inside the string here. So this is the generic one. Now observe carefully. What happening internally and what is the advantage we are getting? The advantage basically what we need to understand. So here we provide the type. Whenever we are providing this particular type, what happening internally? So we can modify the at runtime. This particular sections we are going to modify at runtime. So while creating an object here, we are trying to modify. First object I created with the integer. Second object I created with a string. But here I'm not getting any error. Because of this particular generic type, what happening internally? We are not getting any error. So why we are not getting it? Because the generic is going to take care of data type. At runtime, you can any number of data types you can pass. So one more example I'm providing. One more example I'm providing here, something like here, box example. Okay, the box we already discussed in the multiple examples here. So here I'm going to use the same box here. Here I'm going to use the same box, but here it will not going to take string. It will not going to take string here. We need to pass the box object here. Now you can see any error. So other than this particular variable name, because the variable name is same we defined here. Now observe carefully. We created one class. This object we are creating multiple times. Okay. The object we created with multiple data types. First we come up with the integer. Second we come up with the string. And the third we come up with a box here. Now what you understand here? With the help of this particular generic concept. Okay. With the help of this particular generic concept here, now we are trying to write multiple objects here with the different data types here. Okay. And here, if I'm going to run gen dot show type method, and here I'm going to write, so not this particular gen, it is having gen 1 here, and the last one I'm trying to call the gen 1 2. So it is nothing but generic 1, generic 1 2, and generic. Now you can see what is the types we are having here. Now you can read this. First one is the integer we are having. Second one we are having a string. Third one we are having a box type. Now how many objects we are creating? 3 objects. But class is same. Getting the point? Only one class we are having here, but objects we created multiple here. Object we created multiple here. So this is the way we are going to write the generic examples here. Getting the point? Because if you understand this particular example, the collection related example what we are going to discuss here, this is basically, it is very important example we are discussing here. Okay, this example, it will give you the more understanding on the collection related example. Getting the point? Collection related example, it is going to provide more understanding here. So now, any questions regarding this particular generic here? Anyone having any questions? Okay, so if not, now what I will do, I'm going to call the get object method, and it will try to execute 17 to 23. Okay, so observe carefully. So first let me run this particular method, gen dot get to object method I'm calling it. This object method, it will try to return the value here. It will try to return this particular value. Now, so this is the one more method. Okay, so I will explain that also. 1 to gen 1. Now, before going to explain your queries, observe carefully. I'm trying to print the multiple values. I'm trying to print this particular multiple values here. Okay, so type is integer. We are getting 200. Type is string, but we are getting 200. So here I provided the string. Okay, I provided the 200 inside the string. But if you're not interested, you can make something like generic example. Okay, generic example I'm trying to make, and I'm running one more time. Now you can see the type is 200 we are getting because of it is integer. Because it is a type is string, we are getting a string message, and it is a box type. So we are getting box object here. Okay, we are getting box object here. So whatever we are passing here, everything with help of this particular get obj. Get obj, we define one method, and the method internally it is returning the type here. Internally, it is returning the type. So whatever the type we are providing, the type we are modifying with this particular section code. So here we modified with the integer, and here we modified with the string, and here we modified with the box. So this is the type it is providing. And if you see why we are using this particular get class dot get name. Okay, why we are using? Basically, it is trying to providing the type here. What kind of the type of object we are creating? Okay, what kind of the type we are creating? So this is the type. Okay, it is a java.lang.integer object we are creating. Second one, we are creating the string object, and third one, we are creating a box object here. Okay, third one, we are creating this particular box object here. Okay, this is very important information we need to understand here. So this is the purpose of this particular, the method I'm calling get name. Get name basically what kind of the type we are using for this particular obj. Obj basically it is a type T we provided. Getting the point? Here we are using the T, but what exactly the T contain? How we are going to identify? Using this particular information only. So using this particular information, obj.get class, what it will return? Get class basically it will return this particular generic type here. Now inside this particular generic type, what is the generic type having? What is the generic type? The generic class, what is the type we are having? For example, if I'm going to print this, so let me put here something breakpoint here. Now I will run this. I will run this particular method. So I'm going to run this particular method multiple times. Now you can see, first time I'm running. Now if I'm going to expand this, Control Shift I. Now observe carefully. What is the value it is returning? So class, what is the type we are having? Java.lang.integer. Why we are getting the integer? So right now we are passing integer. Okay, right now we are passing integer. Now you can see generic integer we are passing. So whenever I'm calling this particular show type, internally it is trying to return the integer type. Okay, now we understand. So second time it is calling. Second time it is calling. Now if you see this, now it is changed here. Now it is moving into the line number 21 and 22. Line number 21 and 22. So whenever I'm calling this line number 21 and 22, if I'm going to expand this, now we are getting string. The class we are getting as a string here. So based on the object calling, the class is modifying here. Earlier it is showing as a string. Now it is modifying as a string here. Okay. So one more class, one more time it will call here. Now if you use this, so right now we are calling line number 24 and 25. So generic 12 dot show type here. So this show type internally it is trying to call the same line number 14. If I'm going to expand this, now we are getting as a box here. Now we are getting as a box. So why we are getting this particular data types here? Because this particular section will change the data type here. Okay, first two, line number 18, 21 and 24. This section is changing all the data types here. Okay, this is important we need to understand. Getting the point. This is all about the line, why I'm trying to write to print the name of the type what we are using inside this particular generic class. Okay, Sai, for your question here, now what I'm doing here. So first we need to understand. Let me go to any class, abstract to B, and okay, this one. So if you observe carefully here, now what I'm doing here, I'm trying to creating only rectangle here. Okay, here if you observe carefully, I'm trying to create a rectangle triangle. So once I creating this rectangle triangle, I'm not going to modify. So here I don't have an option to create other types here. Only rectangle, and I can create only a triangle. Here only whatever the data type we specify, the specific data type object we are creating. Only one object we are creating here. Only one object we are creating, something like a rectangle. Something like a rectangle. Okay. So once I create this particular rectangle, I don't have other option. So I cannot create other type here. I cannot create a other type here. Getting the point? This is important information we need to understand here. This is one of the important information we need to understand. So once we create this particular rectangle, there is no scope to modify the information. But here, whatever the current example, this particular generic here, we have a scope. With help of this particular generic, the class is same. Generic class is same, but the type is modifying. One time we are creating integer, second time we are creating string, and third time we are creating box here. Okay, so these are all the three objects we are able to create. For example, so whatever we created here, now if I'm going to copy rectangle with another type. Okay, rectangle with another type here. So for example, instead of providing this particular value 1520, I want to interested with the string value st1. Okay, st1 and st2 and st3. So now you can see we don't have a scope to write this particular example because this is not the generic example. It is a it's like a static example, we can call it as a. So once we define the data type, we are not going to modify the data type here. We are not going to modify the information. Only the rectangle, it can allow only the double data type here. So it can allow only double data type, double A and double B. If you are trying to provide with the other data type here. So if I'm trying to providing these three, now it cannot allow here. It cannot allow because what happening internally, so this is the different data type we are providing. Now what is saying here, create a one constructor string comma string. We are getting an error to create a constructor. So there is no constructor is expecting string related information. We are having only one constructor. So the constructor will allow double related information. Okay, this is one of the important example we need to understand here. This is one of the important example we need to understand this. So this is what we are discussing here whenever we are defining the static class. Okay, whenever we are defining this particular static class, so what happening internally? Getting the point? What happening? We are getting an error. But same thing now you can see. We'll go to this particular generic example. Here, one time I'm providing the integer value. Second time I'm providing the string value. Third time I'm providing as a custom object that we created earlier, box object. But here I'm not getting any error here. Getting the point? So because the type we provided here, because of this particular type, we can provide any number of data types here, like any data type. There is no restrictions here. We can make the restriction that I will explain later. But right now, for this particular generic example, there is no restrictions here. Okay, there is no restrictions here. We can type, we can pass any type. So one is a box class. Box is a custom class we created. Based on our example, we created this. But this string and integer, both are coming from the predefined classes. Okay. So any questions here?
No.
Okay. Sai, is it clear? So do you have any questions? Okay. Now, so what I will do, here, observe carefully what I'm trying to explain here. I'm going to provide the information with help of the another example. So the problem here, if I'm going to provide another example. So observe carefully why we need to use this particular generic. Because generic basically, the type, whatever the type we are using here, the type basically, it is a custom object or predefined object. Instead of providing this particular type, integer, string, box, in Java, all the example, all the classes are extending from the object class. Okay. So why we need to define this particular type? Why you need to define this particular type? What happens if I'm not directly, if I'm going to use the object here? Getting the point? If you define the custom class, if you are not defining the custom class, anything, what happens internally? Everything it is going to extend, like any class internally, it is going to extend from the object class. So this section we already discussed in the last session. custom class or predefined classes. By default, all the classes are going to extend from the our object class. Now, the example here, if all the classes are going to extend from the object class here, what happening internally? So some more example I'm trying to define here inside this particular the same package, whatever we are discussing here. It is something like a non-generic here. Okay, here I'm trying to define non-generic example. So now you can see how this particular non-generic it is going to work. So this is the name of the class, something like non-generic I'm defining. And here I'm not going to use the type. So the type basically we come up with a constructor and a object creation. And here, now what I'm doing here I'm going to provide as a object here. Okay, the same type I'm making object obj and so public, the constructor I'm making non-generic, and the parameter again I'm making object only, and so this dot obj is equals to obj. Okay, and so the method also, sorry, the method return type, like whatever the method we define get obj, the method also I'm trying to return as a obj. Observe carefully. Now what I'm doing is whatever we define the methods here. So this is the variable I'm declaring here, and the constructor I'm making as an object, and the method also it is returning object. And here only I'm going to create a main method. Here only I'm going to create a main method. So this is the non-generic object I'm creating. Okay. So this is something like IOB. IOB is equals to the non-generic. I can provide 100. Okay, let me copy the, okay, instead of copying, we can write here. So void show type. Okay, the show type, what is returning internally? It is trying to return the obj dot get class dot get name. Okay, it will try to return the type. What is the type we are using? Now what I'm doing is I'm trying to providing the 100 value. So IOB dot show type. Whenever I'm calling this particular show type, it is returning integer. Now up to it is clear, because if you are using the generic or if you are not using the generic, the type, whatever the type used here, it is printing same. So for example, now another object. This is I'm going to use for the instead of IOB, I am going to use IOS. I will make as a string related information. Okay, string example. Now whenever I'm trying to call second object, sorry, I want to change this IOS. Whenever I'm trying to change here, so first one it is printing integer, second one it is printing string, because we provided 100 and here we are providing string. So third object I'm going to create. What is the third object we can provide? Here I'm going to create as a something like a new box I'm providing. So it is a box type. Let me import this particular box because we are inside the different package. So I'm trying to import this. So here, what is the value we can? Okay, we can give only IO. Only we can give IO. Now here I'm trying to print all the objects here. Now you can see first one it is integer, second one it is string, third one it is printing as a box. The same we expected inside this particular generics here. Whenever I'm trying to print this particular show types here, all the show types, whatever the show types now it is printing, it is fine. So now up to now it is fine. The generic and non-generic is fine. But the problem here, if you observe carefully, IOB dot get object. Okay, IOB dot get object. Whenever I'm trying to print this, okay, so now whenever I'm trying to print this get particular object here, now observe carefully what happening internally. It is trying to print this. Okay, it is trying to print this particular 100 here. So there is no any problem. While printing this particular section, we don't have any problem. But the problem basically when I'm getting here, so if we observe carefully, now I'm going to get the problem. Because the 100 now we identified, the type we identified, it is an integer. So if it is an integer, we can convert into integer. Directly, we can convert into this particular integer. So now if you see, now if you observe carefully, I am getting an error here. Now I am getting an error. Why I am getting an error here? Instead of this particular integer, if I am trying to converting into integer also. Getting the point? Now if I'm trying to converting int or integer, so I tried both example here. Now I'm getting an error here. Okay, so the same example I will explain inside this particular generic concept. Here I'm going to explain. So I'm copying this particular object here, and here now I'm trying to converting into int value is equals to gen.get object. Any error we are getting here? Line number 20. Line number 20, we are not getting any error. Even it is a type you provide as a integer. Okay, if you print this particular line number 19, the type it is printing as a integer only. Okay, but whenever I'm trying to convert the object value, because this get obj, this particular get obj, it will try to return the int value. Okay, whenever it will try to return this particular int value, now what I'm doing here? Now what I'm doing directly, I can convert into int value. So there is no problem here. The conversion it is happening successfully. So same thing, this also. This also. For example, if this I'm converting into, this, we'll get an error. We'll get an error because data type is different here. The gen one, whatever this particular generic one we provided here, it is a type we are having string here. Now we are trying to converting into int here. So definitely we'll get an error. But observe carefully, whenever I'm trying to converting into string, okay, I'm not getting any error. Okay, because here we provide as a generic type, I'm not getting any error here. Happily, we can convert the value. But the same value, if I'm trying to converting into this, whenever I'm trying to converting this particular int or integer, so even though the type is integer, now I'm getting an error. So see the drawback here. Even whenever I'm trying to use this particular object as the type here, whenever I'm trying to make object as a type, internally what happening? So this particular type basically, it is trying to throw an error here. But this particular example, if I'm using same thing in the generic type, we are not getting any error because the generic type internally, it will convert the value into the specific data type here. Okay, whenever we are not using this particular generic, we need to explicitly typecast here. So now you can see I am trying to converting into integer. This is the way of conversion explicitly. Okay, the first drawback we identified here. Getting the point. So another drawback here, we cannot make a conditional related types here. Getting the point. We cannot make the particular conditional related type. So how we are going to make the conditional related type? Basically, if we observe, t extends from the something like number. Basically, whatever we are writing this particular t, the t value, it should extend either number or the number class only. Only the few classes we are making this particular type. But this particular restrictions here, we don't have. If you are trying to write any object, any class, okay, if you are trying to write any class, by default, it is trying to extend from this particular object. So there is no restrictions to make here. But using this particular generic concept here, we can make some restrictions here. Okay, we can make some restrictions here. So this is one of the important example we are discussing. So any questions regarding this particular, why we need to go for this particular generic and what are all the the drawbacks we identify inside this particular non-generic class. Okay, so any questions here? Okay, so this is the advantage we are going to get whenever we are trying to discuss about the important section called generic here. Now we identify the non-generic, what happens internally. Now we'll try to identify the two parameters. So simply here we are trying to providing only one parameter. Now what I will do, I'm going to provide the two parameters. How we can provide here? The two parameters here. To provide the two parameters, first we need to provide the values here. So here, like we need to define here. Not only this particular TV, you can provide any number of values. So something like A you can provide, or you can provide B, or you can provide Z also. There is no restrictions here. Any type we can provide. Okay. So just for understanding, I'm trying to provide as a V. So type and value. Okay. Type and value I'm trying to providing here. Now observe carefully this particular constructor. Now it is going to take as a one more parameter, something like obj2, or we can make as obj2. So here I'm trying to write value obj2. Okay, value I'm making as a obj2. So finally now this dot obj2 is equals to obj2. So I'm making two parameter constructor here. Okay, I'm making two parameter constructors. So first the object we already identified here. Now what I'm doing here, I'm going to provide one more object. So this is I'm trying to return as a V, get to obj, get obj2, and internally it will return obj2. Okay, so this is the another method where I'm defining obj2 and obj here. So I provided a wrong value, the value name I provided wrong. Okay, now you can see. So type here. I'm going to copy this particular type and I will paste. Instead of this particular obj, here I'm going to make as a 2. And here, so we are not using the T. We'll using V here. We'll try to identify the what is the type of this particular V. And what we can do, here we need to provide the two types here. So first one I'm making as an integer. Second one I'm making as a string here. Okay, second one I'm making as a string. Whenever I'm making as a string, I can provide something like a test here. Okay, but here we can provide. If you are not interested here, you can remove this. If you are not interested to write the right side section, so this section code it is introduced in the 9 version. Getting the point? In the 9 version, basically the right side, if you are not providing also the generic type here, it will work. But up to the 1.8, we should match here. Whatever we are providing for this particular type, it should match with the constructor. But from the 9 onwards, so no need to write it. Directly, you can write like this. Directly, you can write like this, so it will applicable here. We can write the statement and we can print this. So first one I'm printing it. No need this, and get object I'm printing. And another one I will print this object 2. Okay, so this is string I'm making here. After making this particular string, I'm making character. So if you observe, we cannot go for the primitive types here. Okay, the generic type whatever we are using here, we cannot define the primitive type. This is important here. Okay, we need to use all the wrapper classes only. All the wrapper classes. Something like we cannot define the int. Getting the point? We cannot go for the double. So how we can define these values? This is. Okay, character is one of the wrapper class we discuss here. Okay, double D is a capital one. The capital D is a wrapper class. Capital F is a wrapper class. Small f is a primitive type. Small d is a primitive type. So this is the way we need to understand here. Something like G I'm giving. Why I'm giving this particular G? Because we are discussing about the generic type. Now you can see, so this is the another example. Box I'm providing the first parameter. Second parameter I'm going to provide as a double. Okay, this is nothing but the generic box comma we can provide double. Okay, we can use this. And here I'm trying to create a double. I want to provide the value something like 123 dot 45. 123 dot 45. Okay, this is a way of providing the two parameters. The first parameter is the box, second parameter I'm making as a double. So here first parameter string I'm making, second parameter character. So first parameter is integer, second parameter I'm making as a string here. Okay, this is the way of calling the all the parameters. Now observe carefully, this is nothing but generic obj1. So I think not 1 2 we need to use here. Okay, I'm trying to call all the methods. Whatever the method we define, I'm calling all the methods here. So now you will see the output how it is printing here. So first of all, the type is integer. Second type we are making as a string, and integer value 200, string value we provide as a test. And the second object, first parameter is a string, second parameter we are providing as a character, and this is the string and G is a character. And first type is a box, second type we made as a double, and this is the box type we provided like box object because it's a custom object. Okay, and it is a 1 to 3 the like a double value. So this is the way of providing the two parameters. So earlier we discussed about the single parameter. Now we are discussing about the multiple parameters here. Okay, so any questions? Any questions regarding this particular multiple parameters here? And here, one of the important example we are going to discuss something like a bounded type here. The bounded type example. So we can use any number of parameters. There is no restrictions here. If you are interested, you can make W or you can make X. You can W, X, something Y, you can make something like A, you can make something B, or you can C. Anything you can make. So there is no restrictions. You can make any number of values here. But only, so this type of object you need to provide here. This is important. You cannot provide those many parameters here. So max to max, we are going to use 1, 2, 3. Okay, but here there is no restrictions here. You can take any number. But the problem, how you are going to provide. So if you are using 9 parameters, you can provide 9 objects like all the whatever the wrapper classes so far we discussed here. Integer like byte, short, long, int, float, double, character, boolean. These many the wrapper classes type we can provide. But all the cases at a time we are not going to use here. Okay, so max to max, if you are providing 1, 2, 3, it is enough here. Getting the point? This is one of the important example we need to understand here. So how we can discuss about the bounded type parameter. The bounded type parameter just now I explained here. Conditional parameters. So here I'm providing the conditional parameters. How we can provide the condition one. So it is one of the important example we are discussing here. Let me write the conditional parameters. So how we can write this particular conditions here. So the condition I'm making as a bounded type. Okay. So inside this particular bounded type, I'm going to make as a this particular T I'm making. Okay, we can make anything. So that just for understanding the type is a readable type. Whatever the T we are making, it is a readable. So because of that, I'm using it and I'm making array type here. Getting the point? Here I'm making array type here. So earlier we come up with a single object here. Now I'm making with a object something like a array type here. Okay, so what we need to understand here. So once we provided this particular array type, here I'm creating constructor. Okay, so constructor bounded type I'm making. So here also I'm going to make something like a nums here. And here this dot nums is equals to nums here. Okay, we identify this. But here, now what I'm doing here, I'm going to write one average method. The average method is trying to return double type here. Getting the point? Here, if you observe carefully, I'm defining one method, something like average method. So the average method basically, it will try to return the double value. Okay. So here, if we observe carefully, how we are going to return the double type, because this t at a compile time we cannot identify what exactly this particular t will contain. Okay, what exactly this particular t will contain here. This is one of the important example we need to understand here. What exactly the particular t it is going to contain here. Now, if this particular t, if you provide a box object, how we can return the box object? From the box object, how we can return the double value? Or if you are trying to return some string related object, how we are going to return from string to this particular double type here? Okay, so basically if you see, we discussed this particular example in the earlier. Now what I am doing here I'm trying to make something like a double sum is equals to default value I'm making. Okay, this is the default value, and here I'm going to use the loop. So how I'm making the loop? Into I is equals to 0 and nums dot length here, and this particular length I'm going to make I less than. Okay, and here I can make as a I plus plus. So this particular loop is working. Once this particular loop is working, now what I'm doing here, I'm going to find out the sum here. Sum plus is equals to, here I'm using the assignment operator, and here I'm going to make as a I. Okay, so after this, what happening internally? What happening here? Whatever the nums we are getting. So now if you see, this is a generic type. Whatever the array type we provide the line number 4, it is coming as a generic type. So this particular generic type, how we can convert into this particular double? Because the sum I provided as a double here. If you observe carefully, I provided this particular sum as a double. This particular value, whatever the value we are going to get, right now, we cannot understand. While implementing this particular code, we cannot understand what kind of the type we are going to pass here. We may pass string, integer, double, float, something, but how we can convert into this particular value as a sum? That is wrong, right? So for example, basically, for example, what you need to understand, the sum is equals to sum. This particular sum plus num of I. Okay, this num of I, whatever I'm going to give, if it is a character, so if for example, if I'm going to give here C, how we are going to convert into this? C plus sum. Is it possible to convert? No. How is it possible to use a sum here? Sum plus C? No, because sum is having, we are providing with a double data type. C is a character type. How we are going to make a sum of this particular two? Getting the point? This is not possible here. But how we can write? Whenever we are trying to do this, but this kind of operations here, this is important here. We are going to make the condition like this. We are going to make the condition t extends with here number. Sorry, n is missing. So t extends with this particular number. Here, now what I will do? Here I'm going to call the double value. Now observe carefully. Any error? The line number 11, we are not getting any error here. Okay. So happily, we can convert this. Return sum nums dot length here. Okay. This is a way of converting into average. Now what you understand here, even if you observe carefully, this type we cannot understand now. This type, what is the generic type we are going to create. So here, even though if we are not aware of this particular type, but happily we are able to make some and we are able to return the average here. We are able to return this particular average here. But how we are able to return the average? Because of this particular condition. This particular condition we'll call it as a bounded type here. But if you see inside this particular number, we are having this particular double value. Any idea like how many classes are extended from this particular number? Any idea how many classes are extended this particular number? Only 6 classes. Okay, only 6 classes are extended this. So what are the 6 classes? First one byte, okay, short, int, and long. These are all the primitive type I'm explaining, but you can understand wrapper classes. So byte wrapper class, short wrapper class, int or long and long. The another two, float and double. These are all the 6 classes are extended this particular number. Now what you understand here? So making this particular condition, now what we are doing is we are trying to providing the value. This double value now it is available under this particular number. You can write any class. The type basically it is allow only these 6 classes. Okay, whatever the type here, whatever the t we are providing here, so this particular t, it can allow only these 6 classes. If you are trying to write a float, or if you are trying to, sorry, if you are trying to write the character, boolean, string, or any custom classes, the compiler will give an error. The compiler will give an error. Why will get an error? Because of this particular number. Here we are trying to extending from this particular number. Because of this, we are going to get an error here. Okay, so this is a way of writing the conditional type. This is, we'll call it as a bounded type here. Any questions here regarding this particular bounded type? Anyone having any question? Okay, so I'm going to stop the session here and we'll continue evening. So yesterday I had some work, like I'm having some office work, so I could not connect the session. So I messaged to Neelima, but I hope, I don't know, she explained or not. Okay, so unfortunately I don't have a information to share with you. So because of that, I share the information to the Neelima. I hope so you received the message from the Neelima. Yesterday evening we don't have a class. Okay, so we'll try to conduct the evening session and we'll continue the same example. The bounded type we completed. Now we have some other example we are going to discuss. And the same, now what I want to provide, from tomorrow we are starting one of the important concept at 7 a.m. You can you can attend the session. So something like a string related example we are going to discuss in the tomorrow, 7 to 8 we are going to discuss here. So I'm requesting everyone, you can join the session so that we can easily understand like how this particular string is going to work internally, what happening internally. That's so today evening we'll continue the same session, and tomorrow morning you can join the 7 a.m. I'm going to give the new link for the 7 a.m. for. Okay, I will share the information to the Neelima. You can access from the Neelima. Okay, so any questions? Okay, so if we don't have anything, we'll continue evening.